living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Let's say you're a parent. Do you ever feel guilty? Hi there, I'm Dr. Carol, and this is Relationship Prescriptions. I think probably every single parent would answer yes to that question. Feeling the weight of bringing another child into the world and then, raising them and you care, that's a setup. We are all broken human beings, so none of us do the parenting thing perfectly, and that is just a great setup for parent guilt. But also, that very guilt can raise barriers to the kind of connection with your children that you need and desire and that God wants you to have. Parenting is perhaps the most important job anyone could ever be entrusted with. So this is a big deal. But at the same time, letting your children be in God's hands is such an important skill as well. This is another human being. It's not an extension of you. To unpack all of that, I have a parenting expert with me on the program today, Lori Wildenberg. She is a parent of 4 now grown children. Lori is a licensed parent-family educator, a podcaster, the co-founder of 1 Corinthians 13 Parenting, a national speaker, author, and parent consultant, and on and on. She has authored or co-authored 5 books, including Messy Journey, How Grace and Truth Offer the Prodigal a Way Home, and The Messy Life of Parenting, Powerful and Practical Ways to Strengthen Family Connections. During our current stressful season in life, the pandemic and coming up to the holidays, and there's just a whole lot. The stress on parents is heavier than ever. I'm not sure that any of us have ever experienced a season of life when parents as a whole, in general, have felt more weight, have had more to deal with. Well, we're going to unpack a lot of those dynamics today, Lori and I. And most importantly, I want you to be listening for the idea of connection. Lori's premise is that focusing on connections with your children is much more important than most other things that parents spend time worrying about. During this conversation, we had an occasional interference with the mic, but I trust this content will be so helpful. So here is my conversation with Lori Wildenberg. Well, Lori Wildenberg, I am just so pleased that our time worked out and that you have agreed to be here on this episode. And I think it is such an important time to address the topics that we're going to today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Dr. Carol, I am so excited to be here chatting with you. And thank you so much for your gracious invitation.
I didn't realize that I had heard various things about you that you've written and been on other podcasts and whatever. And as I was just preparing for our conversation, I thought, what a timely and important time to be talking about the whole issue of parenting. And that is something that you are so helpful to so many about. And I just like to start by highlighting the stress and perhaps guilt that I think so many parents are probably feeling in the middle of this, pandemic and the holidays coming up and whatever. What are you hearing from parents about the loads that they are feeling?
Oh my gosh. I mean, think of it. Okay, we all experience parental guilt, don't we? I mean, we all go through that. The woulda, shoulda, couldas. I should have done this. I wish I would have done that. So we've all been there. But now you add the pandemic onto that. And then now we add on all of the stressors that come along with the holidays. And oh my goodness, I think There are some people that have really wanted to, parents that I've worked with just want to give up and retreat. There are others that have just flat out exploded. I mean, all of those emotions that we feel, Dr. Carol, they're on steroids right now, are they not? And I think it's pretty human. And so hopefully today, as you and I talk about some of this stuff, I'm hoping that we can help some of the parents with that feeling fragile or feeling fatigued or feeling overwhelmed or especially emotional or irritable. I'm hoping that that we can help kind of parents navigate this really difficult time, because we are all going through it. We are all feeling these feelings. It's tough.
It is. And the school, as we're recording this right now, many states and school districts are wrestling with whether they are even going to be opening school again for the rest of this year. I was talking with a friend just about an hour ago who is having her 3 children at home now because of the pandemic. And she and her husband both work in ministry. And it just, the complications that all of that adds.
I know the schedule is unbelievable. You're trying to, now everybody's at home working. First of all, you've all got to find your own space. Then how do you handle being a parent because your kids are home? I don't know. It's very complicated, and it's really difficult.
You have said nothing smartens up a person faster, knocks one's pride down quicker, or tenderizes a heart more than being a parent. I know you've experienced that personally, and I've heard some heart-touching conversations you've had about your own family. And I think that is probably a fairly broad picture. When we step back and look at what the job of parents is, I think many parents, especially godly parents, when they bring a child into the world, they want that child to grow up and do right. They're focused on, teaching their child to do the right things. And then when their child messes up, whether in a small way or at least in their perspective in a major way and becomes a prodigal, and you've written about that, parents take it personally. Like it's an indictment on them. Talk about that and why that is really not a healthy perspective.
Well, we all love our kids big, right? And we're very passionate about how we feel about them and passionate about how they're going to grow into the person that we hope they grow into. Of course, we have to sort of refocus a little bit, as you were saying, having a little different perception that being passionate and loving our kids big is important, and our kiddos need that. What we also need to remember is within that passion, our kids have their own purpose and they are their own person. And I think we can get stuck on thinking that they need to be the person we think they ought to be. Heck, we're still having trouble being the person we're supposed to be. And I think we can get really stuck on that. I think one of the things that sort of gets in our way, I mean, even when a baby is first born, we're always looking at if it's a birth child, if we're always looking at now, who does this child resemble?
Yeah.
And right. I mean, we start there, and then pretty soon, and that starts out being a bit of a compliment. And then if a child has a particular talent, then we think, oh, you take after mom, or you take after dad, or dad's side of the family, or mom's side of the family. And we start doing that. And then we move into sort of the negative mode when the child expresses something like, let's say they have a issue with having trouble self-regulating, and they've got some anger things going on. We might say, oh, you get so angry just like your dad, and pretty soon we just keep identifying them according to someone else. And I think we've got to let our kids own who they are. And that's not only important for our kids, but it's important for us. It's important for us to see our child as their own person, so that when they do have that temper tantrum in the grocery store, that isn't necessarily our fault, unless we've decided to take them to the store knowing that they're especially hungry or they're especially tired. That probably isn't the wisest decision. But they get to own their own emotions, and they get to own their own wandering. And they get to own their own talents and their own disposition. And I think once we have that perspective, we can funnel that passion for our kiddos into helping them find their purpose, rather than having them grow into who we think that they ought to be. Because once we recognize they're their own person, I believe that we are more able to take ourselves like, oh, it's my fault that, so that my child stole something, or my child had this tantrum. So I think we've got to be really careful in owning something that actually belongs to the child.
That sounds to me a lot like God. We are his children. He calls us his children, but he gives us human beings the dignity of choice. Although we are made in his image, just like our children are in our image, that he doesn't create robots, and some of his children mess up. Some of his children mess up big time.
Yeah. I can't think of one person in scripture other than Jesus who didn't mess up. All of our biblical heroes messed up, and those mess ups actually were something that God could work with and teach through, so that the purpose that they had in a particular situation, that added to their knowledge of that and their growth in a particular characteristic.
You talk about, in a lot of your work, something that I believe is far deeper and more important than just your children's behavior, and that is working on connection with your children. As a parent, they're a separate human being, but developing connection with them, whether they're acting good or bad, or young or older, at home or adults are already out of the home. Talk about what you mean by connection and what that can make possible.
Oh, gosh, this is my favorite topic, Dr. Carol. We want connections with our kids, with our family members that last a lifetime. And we don't typically have babies and think, well, once they are out of the house, that's that, right? We want the fruit of seeing them as adults. We want the opportunity to walk alongside them, maybe as they become parents themselves, and have the joy of being a grandparent. We want connections that last a lifetime. And there are things that we can inadvertently do that can get in the way of that. Now, this is a little bit different for the Western mindset, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of us parent so that our children will become independent. That seems to be our goal. And that is a total Western way of thinking. And I think if you unpack that a little bit further, I believe we really don't mean to parent our children so that they are independent. I believe most parents want to parent their children so that they are responsible human beings, responsible for their actions, their attitudes, their words, their behavior, those sort of things, to be responsible in that way. When we parent for our kids to be independent, what we're doing is we're growing kids apart from us rather than connecting them to us or to the Lord. They feel like they have to be the Lone Ranger and solve everything on their own. I had worked with a with a dad who was parented in a way that for independence. And this man is a very capable person. And when he was younger and living in his parents' home, when he would run into a difficulty and ask his dad for help, his dad would say, "You're smart, you figure it out." Now, if you wanted to parent for independence, there you go. But what happened was, over time and having that message time after time, that created a huge barrier, and even to this day, a great big rift in that relationship. Another mom had told me that I was speaking at a mom's group, and I was talking about this topic of interdependence versus independence, connection, and why that's important in a family, and why that really is our heart. At least it's most parents' hearts. And I ended up sitting down next to her after my talk, and she had her little one sitting on her lap. And she said to me, she goes, I was parented to be independent. And that's how I thought I needed to parent my son. And she said, after listening to this, she said, I do not want to do that. She said, because I realized when something goes bad, or even if something goes well, I don't think to let my parents know. It's not like I'm trying to keep a secret from them. It's just that it's just not on my brain to ask them for help or to ask them to celebrate with me. Now, I know for me, and I'm going to say probably for most parents, we want our kids to call us when they're having difficulty. And I'm not talking about enabling, right? I'm not saying that we have to fix everything for them. I'm talking about walking alongside, which is very different, and rejoicing with them as well. We want to be in our kids' lives. And so we want to parent for connection. And there's some really actually very small, but really impactful things that we can do, Dr. Carol. Would it be okay if I kind of explain that a little bit?
Why don't you? You bet, Lori.
Okay. Well, one small thing that we can do, and I came across this, which ended up sort of being a family philosophy, completely by accident and totally for my own self-preservation, and maybe even for the children's. So we have 4 kids, and our 4 kids are all about 2 years apart, except for the middle 2, who are about a year and a half apart. So we had 4 kids, 5 and under. And I can tell you, it wasn't a meal until somebody spilled. It drove me out of my mind. It didn't matter, sippy cups or not. Things got knocked over, and it happened every single meal. And I thought I would lose my mind. I mean, a spill to me became like the worst part of my day. And so it was happening constantly. And so finally, I started to come up with a phrase. And this is what these 3 statements I would say. That's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up. Now, that's okay did 2 things. When I said that's okay, one thing it did is it settled me down. And I stopped clenching my teeth.
Right.
When I said that's okay, it also let my kiddo know, the one who had just spilled, hey, mom didn't go crazy, right? Mom can handle a spill. That's okay. Then I would say, everybody spills. And by saying that, it reminded me that I make mistakes. Other people make mistakes. My children make mistakes. And by saying that, it let my kids know mom makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and I'm normal, so I make mistakes. So that's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up. Now, here's the responsibility part. If I wanted to parent for independence, I still could say that's okay. Everybody spills, and then you clean it up. All right. We can do that. And sometimes you have to, because you're too busy with something else going on that they have to handle this. But if that's the message that they get every single time, what ends up occurring is that, let's say, a sibling makes a mess, and you ask another sibling to help clean up the mess, they're going to say, well, I didn't do that. That's not mine. I don't have to clean that up. It's not up to me. I didn't make that mess. And I don't want a family like that. I want a family that is there for each other. So I would say, that's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up. Not I'll clean it up for you. That's enabling. I will help you clean it up. They are still in charge of the cleanup, but I will come alongside them and help them with the messes in life. And then as they all got to be teenagers, the line was, that's okay. Everybody crashes the car. We'll help you figure it out. So it can be applied in every situation. And that way your kids know that you are there for them, which is something most parents really want to be, is there for their kids, not to solve all their problems, but to come alongside them in the good and the bad times.
Wow. That just seems like such a healthy perspective in creating a family that is a family. And as I step back and think of what I believe Jesus envisioned for the family of God in the New Testament church, it seems like that's the kind of picture he would want for the broader family. So modeling that for children seems just so Christ-like. And what a practical way to think about it. It makes me think, Lori, of a mother I communicated with just a week or so ago, and she's a Christian. She now has a young adult son who is away from home. He's grown now, but wants nothing to do with God, wants nothing to do with Christianity, and has developed a very dark, hard heart about the things of God. And the pain in her heart in trying to wrestle with, how do I deal with my grown son now? And just with that as a transition or a background, Lori, what would you say to parents who now have children who are teens or young adults, and maybe their connections haven't been very strong? They're hearing this now and feeling like, yeah, that would be the Christ-like thing to do. Any thoughts in that kind of a scenario?
You can still take this idea and implement it even with adult children. You just change the terms up a little bit, but for them to know that you are there and alongside them, even if they're living in another state, you can still support. And I do think if we've raised our kids to be independent, and in that way, maybe they have a little bit of a hardening of the heart, perhaps. God can make up time in the air, and he can change all that. So I would just encourage more pursuit of that lost sheep. Go after them, and not in a sense of aggressiveness or anything like that, but maybe send them a text message more often, a few times a week. You can say, hey, I was just at the grocery store and I saw Fruit Loops, and that reminded me of you when you were a kid. Something small to start reconnecting. And you can always come up with something like that. I mean, especially food, right? Sometimes food does remind us of,
yeah,
of our kids, or our kids can be reminded of their growing up. But I would say to pursue, and to actively pursue, such as, doing some text messages, sending a nice little note, and not so much about you. Like sometimes we can get ourselves in the mix there, by almost saying, oh, it's my fault, things are like that. If there's something that you need to confess and ask for forgiveness for, absolutely. But don't come at a situation from a woe is me standpoint, so that the one who's on the receiving end believes that, oh gosh, here they are again. It's all about them. All right.
It does make it all about you. If you stay in that, poor me, I messed up, and that's all you do.
Yeah. And it's important to acknowledge that. I mean, if there's something that you need to acknowledge and own, do it.
Right.
And express regret and try to make restitution if that's appropriate. That's always a good thing. And ask for forgiveness. Those are important things, but don't keep going back there, because that, we've been talking about guilt, right? Yes. That guilt is going to get in the way of the relationship, because then it's going to only be focused on that. And you can't fix what has happened, but you certainly can change what's happening in the present and going to the future.
I am so grateful that you said that. Seems to me like holding on to that guilt or living there ends up resulting in building barriers rather than making connections. That can be a real roadblock to the very thing you desire with your children at whatever age.
Yeah. And I think the enemy can use that in a big way. He's a great historian. He's as old as time, right? So he's got that down pretty well. And he knows what works. And I can fall into that really easily, and unless I'm really paying attention. When my kids have either wandered off the path or behaved badly, or I've done something, especially me, if I've done something really bad, that needs correction, or, I've had a situation in the past that I didn't handle well. Whenever I happen to be going to speak, and I wonder if you've got this same situation, Dr. Carol, but whenever I've gone, I keep hearing, you have no business speaking to parents. You have messed up in this way, and one way to stop that parental guilt, first of all, it's your own personal mindset, but also the enemy, uses that against us. If it's real guilt and we have to confess, boy, that's a good thing. But when we have confessed and we've moved on and it keeps at us, that is false guilt. And so I think one of the best things to do is to agree, yep, I did mess up. And that's why I got Jesus. And that's why Jesus is going to have me be the one to be able to speak to these parents or respond in this situation. And I think if you can continue to go back to the Lord and to remember that attack will lessen. But we also have to change our own self-talk too, where you can say, yep, I did mess up, and I'm going to do this going forward. This is what I've learned. Or, have a goal in mind. And if I have this goal in mind, what are the benefits of doing A, B, or C? And that will help you get to your goal, rather than think of those stumbling blocks, such as what guilt kind of generates. If we can start thinking of the benefits of, okay, I've learned something here. And with our kids, one of the best ways we can connect is letting them know that we're human and we mess up too. So I think that there are good things from mistakes and ways to even connect with our kids because of that.
That reminds me when Joseph said to his brothers, you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. God can take even your very mistakes as a parent and transform it. Thanks for sharing that. And I believe that will bless many parents. Lori, let's just bring this home right to where we are right now. We're getting close to Christmas. What might be any thoughts that you might have in just focusing on connections, even right now in this holiday season.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So remember, if you really want to build connections that last a lifetime, and that is your main goal, okay, give yourself grace space to be human. Mm-hmm. And your kids too. And we all need a little extra of it right now because of
yes, we do.
pandemic stuff. So yes, give yourself a lot of grace space and your loved ones. Let go of that perfection infection. Let it go. Know that sometimes that just okay is good enough. All right. The tree doesn't have to be perfect. The meal might not be perfect. That's okay. The decorations don't have to be perfect. And try to be somewhat flexible. If you've got a little one who's toddling around and grabbing things, well, you might need to think about how you're decorating right now. Is that going to work out for the way your family is at the moment? So look at your family realistically as well, and just let go of some things, be okay with just okay. And the stuff that is really important to you, your values and your faith, those are the things, and the connection, those are the things to perhaps focus on a little bit more. And it is hard. If you value connection and you're also a master baker, but you love to have a really clean kitchen, then maybe having your kids enter into baking with you might not be the best scenario. Know what your limitations are too. But if you can draw them in and maybe have some things in place where maybe you've already measured the flour out so it's not going to get so messy. If you can do some things like that so that you can still have connection and you and your family members can be working together and being a part of something together, then I would say really do that. But at the same time, know what drives you nuts and then try to figure out how to avoid that situation so it doesn't turn out to be more irritating than enjoyable.
Great ideas. You've used the word messy, Lori, several times, and I think that is a great picture. In fact, your books, a couple of your several books you've written or co-written many, and a couple of them, Messy Journey, How Grace and Truth Offer the Prodigal a Way Home, and The Messy Life of Parenting, Powerful and Practical Ways to Strengthen Family Connections. Just a word or two about your books and how people might connect with you if they want more about your parenting connections.
Oh, gosh. Thanks, Dr. Carol. Yes. So you can find my books anywhere. I've got, as Dr. Carol said, The Messy Life of Parenting, Powerful and Practical Ways to Strengthen Family Connections. That is my most recently published book, and I think it's probably the most important one. Really unpacks the idea of that's okay, everybody spills, I'll help you clean it up. And ways to encourage those family connections and relationships and toxic ways of relating to avoid. That book, I think, is a really important book for families. If you happen to have a young person, tween to young adult or even older adult, or even a sibling who has wandered off the expected path, it could be drugs, sexual things, hardening to religious type stuff, faith-based things, anything where they've wandered off the expected path. Messy Journey, how Grace and Truth Offer the Prodigal a Way Home, is the book for you. And there are so many ways of connecting and praying that I think are really important for the person who is suffering because they do have a prodigal in their life. And then the next two books, which I co-authored with Becky Danielson, Raising Little Kids with Big Love and Raising Big Kids with Supernatural Love. We also wrote Empowered Parents together. but the Raising Little Kids with Big Love and Raising Big Kids with Supernatural Love, those two books both focus on 1 Corinthians 13, one for little kids and the other one for bigger kids. And each chapter is one piece of 1 Corinthians 13. So for instance, chapter 1 is choose patience. Love is patient, and how to develop patience in your kids and in yourself. And love is kind. So choose kindness is the second chapter, how to develop kindness in yourself and in your kids and so on. Those books are also very practical. I encourage parents not to read those books, but to take those books, look in the index, find what you need, look up temper tantrums or anger, dating, and then go straight to what you need.
Oh, awesome. I want to give a shout out too to your Moms Together podcast and your 1 Corinthians 13 Facebook group. And we'll link to all of those in the show notes to this episode. Lori, I want to say thank you for your work, for sharing your heart, for your authenticity, and your time here today. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You are a very gracious hostess.
And I want to wish you and your family a very blessed and precious Christmas season. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
So what are you, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a step-parent, going to do next in building a connection with your child or children? I believe that is an expression of the heart of God. That's how He parents us. If you look at the broad way in which God parents us, that is a great paradigm. And so expressing that in the way that you parent your children at whatever age, with whatever mess or spills they are experiencing life, whether they are choosing the kinds of things that you're happy with, or with their own free will, making choices that sadden you, focusing on connections, powerful way to keep your leverage as a parent, or keep the ability of you as a parent to make an impact on your children's lives. We will certainly link in the show notes for this podcast to Lori Wildenberg's resources. You can find out a lot more on her website, LoriWildenberg.com, or check out her books, Messy Journey, How Grace and Truth Offer the Prodigal a Way Home, and The Messy Life of Parenting, Powerful and Practical Ways to Strengthen Family Connections. We'll link to her podcasts and social media as well. If you're a parent, I would encourage you to check out Lori Wildenberg's resources and connect with her. You will find that encouraging and help you move out of the guilt and into building healthy connections. On that theme of connections, that is such an important thing to focus on during this holiday season. Certainly the Christmas holiday season is always somewhat stressful for individuals and families, and this year even more so, with the pandemic perhaps necessitating less social interaction outside of your immediate family than you're used to, than you desire. Finances may be an issue. Although there are certainly improvements in some aspects of the economy, there are still so many of you who are experiencing financial troubles this year around the pandemic and so on. And I want to, first of all, encourage you to nurture the connections that are available to you. You may need to reach out beyond yourself and proactively connect with others in ways that seem less natural, but are still important. Do that. Invest in the time in your family. If you have children at home, Focus more on time and experiences rather than things. Same thing with your spouse. If you're married, if you live alone, you may need to proactively spend some effort to reach out beyond yourself in connecting with others in helpful ways, giving as much as receiving. So I want to encourage that. And I would love to strengthen our connection between me and you. I would love to hear from you. If you go to our website, drcarolministries.com, leave me a message. It really means the world to me to hear from you. And I know you hear that from podcasters or other, authors or speakers or whatever, but if you would talk to the team that I work with, they would tell you that when I get a message from you, it lifts me up. It fuels me. First of all, I know that you're listening, but it also helps me know what's going on with you, the things that you are feeling challenged by. And, God willing, some perspective or insight or encouragement that I can respond to you with and be a help in your life. So, drcarolministries.com, feel free to leave me a message, a question, even a topic you'd like, perhaps for an upcoming episode. I want to thank you for being part of our podcast family, our online family, and I pray that God bless you in a special way this Christmas holiday season.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.